Hey everybody, welcome back to I Know a Guy. If you're new here, my name's Anthony. I am a business profit advocate. On this show, we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals, and just people doing cool things. For example, today we're meeting with Glenn Rudin. He's known as the message master. His company's always been creative. He helps business owners sell more products and services through clear messaging and smart strategy that connects with his customers. How you doing today, Glenn?
I'm doing unbelievable, Anthony, and I'm thrilled to be talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I was excited to see that we found some time to connect. I was reading everything about you, and I'm super excited. I think a lot of people could definitely use some help with the clear messaging. So to start off, where are you calling in from today? Where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm out here in they say I'm on Long Island. I don't know why I'm not in Long Island, but I'm a transplant here for I don't know 35 years, and somehow that has just become the way we speak. I'm on Long Island. We're all on something, but somehow that's how that became the phrase here, as opposed to I'm in Long Island. But seriously, I'm about 35 miles outside of New York City.
Okay, so 35 years, you're not considered a native yet. I mean, that's you're basically the next best thing.
Yeah, I think for everybody else they would consider me a native, but since I've been living out here, I've been trying to figure out how I can move off of Long Island, and I still haven't figured out what to do about that.
Okay, so this is going to be an open-ended question because there's a million things you could do out there, but somebody that's never been there, like myself, what do you recommend first stop somebody
Well,
visiting?
well, one of the things that we're privileged with here in Long Island is if you like water. I live directly in the center of the island, almost the center east and west, and center north and south. So, about a 15-minute drive to the north is the Long Island Sound, which separates Long Island from Connecticut, looking about 20 miles across the waters. We've got a beautiful body of water there. If I go 20 minutes to the south, I've got the Atlantic coast facing beaches. Maybe you've heard of Fire Island. Maybe you've heard of the Hamptons. Maybe you've heard of Robert Moses State Park. The entirety of Long Island, 175 miles long, all faces south and faces the Atlantic Ocean. So if you like beach, water, boating, fishing, laying on the beach, taking long walks, watching sunsets, all of that stuff is here available to you 24/7. Even when it's really cold, it's refreshing to take a walk on one of the beaches here. And obviously, in the summer, it's a magnet and absolutely packed end to end. And there's any variety of different types of beaches and beach experiences. So if you've not been to Long Island, but you like water, this is one of the places you want to get to.
Okay. Yeah, you sold me. I'm on my way. Well, we'll wait till spring. So awesome. Okay, awesome. So what can you tell us about always being creative?
So Always Been Creative is my company that's now been around. I'll be going into my 18th year, uh, September of 2025, and it's a boutique marketing and sales driven company that has two main functions. The first one, and the reason that you and I would be here talking today, is that I am what I would call a communications and strategy coach. I help people, just as you said earlier, I help business owners figure out what they need to say about their businesses clearly so that their messaging resonates and creates opportunities with their customers. So I coach people on branding, on messaging, on delivery, on motivation, all those different kinds of things that people really need who are stuck, can't figure out what the secret formula is, don't know how to move their businesses forward, struggle with their branding or their communication. On the other side of my business, I am a product development expert. I've been in that space for over 35 years. And I still, for my company and for clients, manufacture goods over in China, mainly consumer goods. But over the years, I have manufactured nearly 500 different types of products, Anthony, everything that you can think of from plush toys, small electronics, little gizmos and games, science education devices, clothing and apparel, you name it, I've developed it and imported it. So that's the other side of my business. And what's interesting is working earlier in my career on product development gave me a great handle on the fact that if you look at us people as products, we also need to be packaged the way we dress. We need to be branded the way we speak about ourselves and the way we show up at meetings. So all of this time that I spent in product development was well spent learning how to turn people into products so that they could market themselves to their potential customers.
Okay. So 18 years. How'd you get started to this? It sounds, pretty interesting, but what was the initial bit?
So initially, I was working in a partnership in Manhattan, and one of the customers that I had brought to that partnership, and I felt I was ready to break away from the partnership. I felt that the person I was working with was holding me back. So very often you'll hear people talking about when's the right time to start my own business. Should I have this much money saved in the bank? Should I have this many products sitting in inventory? Should I have this? Should I have that? And for me, the entrepreneurial journey has always been about feeling it in your gut, knowing when it's time to make a move. It's not about looking at numbers on a piece of paper. It's not about studying all these different things about market conditions. It's about knowing in your stomach when it's time to make a move because it just doesn't feel right where you are anymore. So I had this feeling in the partnership that I was in, and literally went into the office at midnight one night because I knew this wasn't going to go well with my partner at the time. I took what I needed, my valuables, packed them in my car at midnight, drove home, went back to the city the next day, and we were about to start our staff meeting. And I said, before we start the staff meeting, I've got an announcement to make. I'm leaving effective immediately. And that's exactly what I did.
Okay. What's your favorite part about what you're doing? You've been doing it long enough. I imagine you gotta enjoy some of it.
Oh my goodness, I love all of it. If we're talking about the coaching business, for me, when I was younger, I wish that I had had a coach who could help me understand how to improve my skills, how to improve my working knowledge, how to improve the way that I do things, my presentations and things like that. Because I know when people struggle with these things, it is a heavy burden to carry. And I know when I get to work with people and I literally see the bulb, I'm very big on light bulbs. The light bulb literally goes on above them. And I can see I've lightened the load. I've enlightened them. They feel better about what they're doing. They've got more confidence going forward. It's a great feeling because I know I've done something good for somebody. And I know that the skill that I've given them, the knowledge I've given them, the way forward that I've given them isn't for 10 minutes. It's for the rest of their lives. It's going to improve their communication skill. It's going to improve their confidence in what they're doing. It's going to make them feel good about themselves for a lifetime. And that's a really gratifying feeling for me.
Okay. What
Most
if,
of the time I do, most of the time I do, but it's very worthwhile.
okay. So you've been doing it for 18 years. You've seen a lot. You went through a lot. You've had some hard won lessons, either yourself or you've seen others going through it. What's something that you would either do different now or recommend somebody do now if they were to start off trying to kind of do what you do?
Well, I think the most important thing that you have to recognize when you're going to go down this entrepreneurial journey is there's an entire suite of things that you have to know how to do, whether it's finance and accounting, marketing, social media, public speaking, book writing, developing business plans. There's no doubt that you're not going to be great at every one of those things. And rather than struggling along the way in an effort to save yourself a little money, in my judgment, you're going to go much further, much faster if you find somebody who can literally fill in the blanks for you, who is that missing puzzle piece for you. So, I hear this all the time. Creatives are not great with numbers. Super. It's great that you recognize that. Then find somebody that you can pay, somebody that you can work with who understands the numbers, who can teach you about the numbers, not somebody who's going to hold it over your head, but somebody who's going to at least teach you to not master the skill, but understand the skill so you can move forward and understand what your transactions are worth. If finance is something you need, get somebody who's good at that. If marketing is what you need, get somebody who's good at that. If you're not good at developing websites, stop struggling to create something that's not going to be good. Find a great website developer. Bottom line, we can't all do everything well, but there are people out there who can come in fractionally and help us fill in the blanks. And I would say that's the number one thing you have to really be able to do.
So I've seen things that you've said before, and they're a lot of them are super engaging, but one of them really stuck out to me. And a lot of us business owners were too close to it to really see this, so it really helps an outside perspective. But you've said confused customers don't ask; they simply move on to the next choice in the marketplace. How do we know if we're confusing our customers?
Well, look, most people, when they go out into the world, whether you're going to local trade groups, whether you're going to your local chamber of commerce, I don't know about, where you are in Iowa back here, there's diners like, Denny's kind of places all over that these networking groups get together with and meet. And very often people will show up and they'll fall into this category. They're not ready for prime time. They'll show up at the appointed time, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning for the meeting, but they haven't put any thought behind how they dress. How are they going to appear when they show up? They haven't put any thought behind their elevator pitch. They more or less wing it when they get there. And when you do that, you can look around the room. A lot of times, you'll be sitting in a semicircle and you can just see people start looking down at their phones, looking around the room. They're not paying attention. You haven't resonated with them. And worse, when it's all done, no one is approaching you for your business card because you haven't done anything to get us interested in hearing more. And if you remember, before we actually started recording for the podcast, what I said earlier was that not everybody in the room is your customer, but everybody in the room knows somebody who is your customer. And that's why your pitch has got to be so effective. So if you're not getting questions, if you're not getting follow-up after one of these meetings, you're doing something wrong or you're in the wrong crowd. But there's a reason that people are not following up with you. And normally it's a confused listener, not even a customer, a confused listener. They don't understand what it is you're trying to connect with them on.
Okay. What are some of the commonalities between all your clients that you know that if they're having this pain point or this pain point, you're going to be able to help them?
I think a lot of people have not really, most of the people that I come in contact with, pre-clients or clients, have not really taken the time to identify who is their ideal customer. And the reason that's so important is the ideal customer is listening a certain way. I always like to use the equivalent. I know I age myself a bit here when I talk about this, but in the old days, we had records that played at different speeds. And if you were playing a record at 45 RPM, but it was a 78 RPM, you couldn't really hear it. Well, when you're speaking a language that doesn't resonate with your customer base, they're not hearing it. So you're putting a message out there that doesn't resonate. And what happens? People don't just use that message when they're meeting face to face, one on one, like you and I are. They don't just take it to the networking meetings that they go to. That's another mistake that they make. But then they do that same poor messaging, put those same poor messages out on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. They'll put those messages out, they'll put those posts out, and then they'll come back the next day and look and say, nobody liked that. Nobody commented on it. Why? Because the people who you're speaking to are not hearing you. You're not speaking the right language that they understand. And that's a really common mistake for almost everybody when I start working with them, is really understanding who is it that you think you're speaking to? And does that customer even exist?
Okay. How about on the professional networking side with power partners? Who do you synergize well with? What other industries or businesses have you found a lot of success, referring back and forth with?
Well, I think that anybody who's working, say, in the accounting space, because they're dealing with startups or they're dealing with business owners who, they're helping them with numbers, but very often those business owners, and I find especially second generation business owners who have taken over a business that's now somewhat mature, and the messaging has probably gone way off the tracks from when the company started. Companies that are, say, 4 or 5 years down the road, they started with an initial concept that was good, and now 5 years later, it's a little bit tired and they need to freshen it up. Or the entrepreneurs who are out there that think they want to start something new. They might have sprung up something over the COVID years, or they might have gotten tired of what they were doing. They no longer want to work in corporate, and they've got a germ of an idea, but they really haven't taken the time to really flesh it out and understand Why does it exist? What is the value behind it? Why does anybody care? And most important, is it different than what's out there already?
Okay. So a lot of people I'm sure are asking, how do I sell more products through clear messaging?
Well, I like to think of it this way. To me, clear messaging is like the window or the door into your business. Think of it this way: when your messaging isn't clear, your window or your door is closed. People are not hearing what you're saying, and so they can't choose to come in to the door because there's no reason. You're not inviting them in. So when the message isn't clear, when it's confusing, when people don't understand your offer or how it's different than something that they already are doing in the same space, there's no reason to listen. There's no reason to open that door and come in. As opposed to when the messaging is really clear, when people really do understand your value, that what you're putting out there is new, is different, is better, is faster, is a greater value than what they're getting now. Now their ears are open. Now the door to your business is open. Now they want to come in. Now at least they're interested to hear more about how this is going to impact them and make their lives better. Remember, it's not about what you want to do. You want to sell more product, you want another contract, you want to sell a new policy. That's all well and good. But we out here listening, we want to know what's in it for us. What are we getting that's better or different than what we get now? And remember this key fact: whatever business you're starting, if you're starting something new, it's going to be 2025. That means the world has lived without it for 2025 years. Chances are we're going to get by in 2025 without it, unless you can give us a clear, compelling message for why we need to pay attention to what you're doing.
Okay. And you've also published a book. It was a brand in your hand. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, A Brand in Your Hand is the business world's first full color and fully rhyming book on branding, messaging, elevator pitch, personal branding. And when you go inside, it's more or less like Dr. Seuss for adults. You'll see that it's illustrated with all these really cute photos, and everything in there rhymes. So I don't know if you can see that, but it says, this is the summit you aspire to reach, the topic about which you're inspired to preach. When you appeal to them in this meaningful way, you develop fans who are not likely to stray. So the whole book is written in little Dr. Seussy, sing-songy type rhymes that will introduce the reader to a number of these topics. It is not meant to be the history of branding and messaging. You can go look up a history book on the history of how long Procter and Gamble has been in the soap business. The idea is for an entrepreneur who is coming out of a field that doesn't include anything about branding, messaging, personal branding, elevator pitch. It's a great introduction to why each of those is important and why you need to know something more about it.
Yeah, I like that. The rhyming, it's more likely to stick in your head. So you need to remember something. If it has a rhyme or it's catchy, that's going to definitely worm its way in there a little bit better. So I like that. Is there anything that I failed to ask that you wanted to mention or add to this?
Well, look, I think the most important thing that people need to understand is that in the world today, thanks to the technology like Zoom, like the social media things that we have available to us, the world is really open to you. And what I would say is where, I used to think about networking groups here in Long Island, say, draw, a 10 or 20-mile circle around where I live. Maybe sometimes I would go into Manhattan. What I challenge the people who are hearing you and I today to think about is the entire world now is potentially your customer through this technology. You can get introduced to anybody in the world through Zoom, through using LinkedIn or Instagram to create new connections for yourself. So think big and wide open picture in terms of who your customers are and where they are, because they're no longer just in your neighborhood, they're around the world. And if you become good, which you need to be, at utilizing the technology, that just like you and I are meeting today from Long Island to Iowa, you could be meeting with people in Europe or Africa. The world is really wide open to you. So be wide open to the world.
Yeah, the world's always been full of interesting people doing interesting things. It's just easier now to have those conversations. So
Absolutely. What are the chances? You said earlier you've never been to New York. I've never been to Iowa. So without this technology, you and I would never cross paths. Now we know I'm going to come out there and see if I can see an Iowa basketball game. I know you're going to make it to New York, and I'm going to take you to, I don't know, the Carnegie Deli for a great pastrami sandwich. And we're going to go on as a guy that I know for the rest of our lives together.
I appreciate that. That sounds great. Trust me, I'm gonna have to make my way up there. But for all those people that are across the world right now, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, if you look at what's above my head here, my company is called Always Been Creative. You can go to my website. You can book, a quick call with me if you want. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I believe I am the only Glenn Rudin up there, and I am on there for hours every day, interacting with people, asking questions, making comments, and trying to introduce myself and what I'm so passionate about to everybody. So it's Glenn, two N's, Rudin. Find me, connect with me. I look forward to meeting all of your listeners.
Yeah, and I'm going to make it as easy as possible. I'm going to put that right in the description, so feel free, make a connection. Absolutely reach out to him. He's a super genuine guy, but perfect. Really appreciate you coming on, Glenn. If anybody out there would like to be interviewed as well, feel free to reach out to me. Or if you're more shy and you want a three-way introduction, reach out to me. I'm happy to do that as well. But other than that, if you're wanting to be interviewed, my link tree will have my scheduling link and all my socials. Glenn's social will be there as well, so it's easy to find. But other than that, Glenn, really appreciate you taking time and coming and talking with all of us. I think we could all take away some really good nuggets at what you have to say. And this is just the surface level. Feel free to have those conversations go deeper. But other than that, like Glenn said, there's too many people out there doing cool things. So let's all get out there and meet some more people. All right.
Love it. And again, I just want to compliment you. As a messaging guy, I love the title of your show. I know a guy. I think that's just so creative and original. And it's a pleasure to get to know and speak with you and look forward to connecting further with you down the road, Anthony. Thanks so much.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I appreciate it, Glenn.